Everybody's coming, sure.
Do you want? Certainly, certainly. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Would everyone join us in the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Glad to see we got a pretty good crowd here this afternoon. Always glad to see everyone out. I think we got a few topics of interest for everyone today. As everyone knows, we board had an agenda that's made public in advance. Here, all those things, but in addition to that, we allow members of the public who would like to address the board to sign in at the day of the meeting. At this time, Mr. Ellis is looking to see if the pink sheet has a name on it.
It does not.
It does not, sir. Okay, sir, very good. You're doing a good job, right? Thank you very much. Okay, let's start by approving the minutes of the July 16th, 2018 and July 17th, 2018 meetings, please. Have a motion? Mr. Baker?
Second.
Mr. Curry? Is that an all yes vote on that item?
Yes.
Okay, all yes. Okay, since we don't have any public comments, we're going to go down to presentations and reports. And our first will be Jacob Green and Dr. Christine Chambers about the Youth Reporting Center.
Thank you, sir.
If you could, Mr. Green, could you just identify yourself and your position?
Sure.
And each person speaks to us for the record, so we'll know that.
Absolutely.
And also it'll help refresh our memories.
No problem. No
Nice
problem.
to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here. President Priestley, Superintendent Midkiff, members of the board, thank you for allowing us here today. My name is Jacob Green. I'm the superintendent of the Office of Diversion and Transition Programs. And I'll get into what that means here in just a second. But overall, I serve as the superintendent for all the institutional schools across the state, the juvenile detention centers, in our treatment centers where we have schools, regional jails, correctional centers, and that kind of thing. So we have 43 sites, traditional sites across the state that we serve out of my office. And we have entered into collaborations with local education agencies, with LEAs, with counties. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. I do have a few people here that I'd like to introduce. I'm going to start here to my left. This is Dr. Christy Chambers. She is the supervising principal of all of the collaborative sites across the state. She was my executive director and actually was kind of the big brainchild behind a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Even though she probably won't take credit for herself, I will give that to her. But now she serves as the supervising principal and takes care of this project across the state. I've got Stephanie Meadows here. She is Christy's assistant and works with Christy closely. She is our teacher supervisor and works with the education staff. We also have two members of the, and it's not Division of Juvenile Service anymore. I'm sorry, I'm going to screw that up. So they've just changed their name. I'm going to say Division of Corrections now, I think. No, but with the Division of Corrections now, as they are one unit, with the Bureau of Juvenile Services, we have Anitra Gilbert, who is the Assistant Director of Community-Based Relations.
Based
Services. Gosh, I knew I was going to screw that up. I'm sorry. And Mr. Scott Caldwell, who is the Director of the Tri-County YRC Services here. So they can also answer questions as well if those come up.
Glad to have all of you here.
And I have I'm probably going to step to the side so I'm not standing right in front of the, if that's okay. Just step back a little bit. I'm going to follow along here. Our office used to be known as the Office of Institutional Education Programs. And we used to deal with students who were incarcerated, students who were sentenced for placement. And that was pretty much our job. That was our sole purpose. Over the years, our mission has grown. And it particularly has grown. A couple of years ago, we were asked to participate in a juvenile justice reform effort. And we were asked to write a grant for some technical assistance to find creative ways to address, ways to prevent students from entering the juvenile justice system as well as truant youth. And that's kind of how we got involved with the DHR. And at the time they were called DJS. You're going to see that throughout here. I still have not updated all my documents. I'm sorry. July 1, all the, at that time, that's a correct acronym. We received that and we worked on a number of items. The main focus was getting students mental health services. However, as we started to study this more and started to talk to schools more about these projects, what we found from the boots on the ground folks, from principals, from counselors, from teachers, is that there was a lack of creative ways to reach and engage students. For whatever reason, this group of students that ends up in institutional education that end up with me, whatever reason, whether it's their trauma, whether it's their background, the traditional approach just isn't hitting home with these kids. It's nothing that the schools are doing. It's nothing that anyone's doing wrong. It's that these students have additional needs and unmet needs to where they just need a different approach and they need more options to get through school. Senate Bill 393 was passed, and that kind of changed our work, and that's how our name evolved into the Office of Diversion and Transition Programs. We had the schools inside our institutions. We serve those students. We also have transition specialists throughout the state. We have 18 transition folks. Now I'll show you the whole graphic of that in a bit. who helped those students get back into school. So we had the education during their stay. We had some aftercare services, and the DJS also has aftercare service. So we had that component. But what we didn't have as an educational provider, we didn't have that prevention component. We didn't have that wing of our continuum in our office. And it was something that I really wanted to develop. It's something that I felt was a huge need. We first started talking about, well, let's put education services into the YRC. Can we figure out a way to do that? Well, that kind of spread into what we are now considering our LEA collaboratives. It kind of went from not just being a YRC, but a service model for all kinds of different kids, whether they're truant, whether they're at risk, whether they're just needing a different approach, whether they're coming back from one of my schools into your school. We started this LEA collaborative approach to address all the needs of those students. We changed our name because I felt like the word institutional was kind of a negative term. And I felt like we really wanted to focus on that prevention piece and really be known as divergent and transition. Yes, there's still going to be a residential need in this state. There's still going to be a need to put students into care and into custody. However, if we can help lessen that, then we think we can with collaborations with county school system, with DJS, and with multiple other partners that we're working with. So currently, for this year, Putnam, Montague, Harrison, Lincoln, Boone, Marion, Greenberg, and Wood, this is where our LEA collaboratives are. And those of you who know the Snyders, who are huge supporters of this initiative and have just been, I can't even tell you how wonderful they've been to work with. I hear Christy talk about the relationship down here in Lincoln County all the time, and how strong it is with the high school. We do have one of those collaborative classrooms already in Lincoln County High School. Next slide. Just to give you an overview of where we're at and I'll go through these kind of quick. This is a map of our treatment centers where we have schools. And this is kind of where the work that we're going to talk about was born out of. So you kind of see we're spread out, not real heavy in the center of the state, but on those fringes. I put a lot of miles windshield time. Also, what used to be called detention centers, and I still call them detention centers, even though I know that's wrong, but that's where I started teaching. My teaching career 20 years ago was in a detention center. I've actually I worked for a county school system in Virginia, but I never actually worked in a county school. I've always been I guess I've been institutionalized for 20 years, I guess. These are where our juvenile centers, majority of students in these centers are awaiting their next place. We do have some commitments in some areas where they're sentenced there, but for the most part, primarily students who are going to go somewhere else. We only actually have two pure, this is what I consider pure correctional centers, and really probably only one out of these two, because we still see occasional detention in San Perdue. But in Tucker County, we have the Kenneth Honey Rubenstein Center, where we have a school. It's a minimum security facility for students. And then in Mercer County, the San Perdue Center, that's where all the Division of Corrections juveniles, sex offenders go to that center to serve their sentence. And I'm colorblind, so I don't know what these colors are, so I'm going to preface that. But Christy makes really wonderfully colorful maps, so I'm told. So it all kind of looks like a mix of grays to me, but it's okay. Other people enjoy it, although I do see the blue and the gold. I can't still see that. But this is our map of our transition services. This was something we started years ago, actually with the ARA funds, the American Reinvestment Act. Started with 8 part-time positions, has grown into 18 full-time positions. And these individuals that you see here and their areas, they help students who come back from that whole list of maps that I just showed you. When students come back to a public school, these individuals work with the schools, the principals, the counselors, and the student for up to 1 year, and they help that student readjust back to, I guess we call it normal life. I don't know if anybody has a normal life either, but what we would consider a non-residential life, I guess is what we'll call it. The grant that we talked about that our office was, that our work with Lincoln County High School comes out of is from the Truancy Diversion Grants. The first piece of that grant, the first mandate we had from the governor and from the legislature was to fund a half-time social worker or school-based probation officer in all the counties. Counties had to apply for those funds, and some counties have chosen not to apply for those funds. So what happened in year one, as you see, we're not in every county. So there was a surplus of money. Well, I'm of the belief that if the state gives you money to help kids, you figure out a way to help kids with it. We don't send it back. So we went back to the governor and said, okay, we've funded all of the requests that we've had for a school-based social worker, school-based probation officer. Now we'd like to expand that and get creative and do some really creative instructional approaches with these students and get into the schools so we can help them prevent getting into care, getting into custody, or any further into custody. So that's where these came about. You'll see the apples indicate where our LEA collaboratives, as you can see, we have one in Lincoln and the others that I mentioned. We also help support the Youth Report Center in Greenbrier County with some money to the county school district. And we also have a creative program in Monongalia County where we're targeting 8th grade students who are either at risk or have already failed the 8th grade, exposing them to career and technical education at an early age to try to re-engage them in education. We are of a firm belief, based on the data that we have of the students that we get in residential care, that the primary learning style that we see is a kinesthetic tactile learner. For whatever reason, we don't really know the reasons why, but we know that it is a fact that the majority of our students that we get in care respond better to kinesthetic tactile learning than they do auditory visual learning. We have the data that shows that. So that's why we have focused so hard on the option pathway program, particularly the option 1, where we can really focus on the option pathway, the attainment of the task, the high school equivalency, and the CTE. For those of you who don't know, my boss is Dr. Kathy D'Antonio. I'm sure that name is probably familiar to many of you. So I have to say that over the years working with her that I have had, that I've been talked to about career technical education, is probably an understatement. She is the champion of career technical education in this state. And I certainly believe in her cause. This is our draft for the continuum of services that we present to you today. Some of this is already happening. Some of this we're working on, so we really wanted your input or any comments or questions. We want to be able to answer those today. And I know Superintendent Midkiff. Yes, sir.
Not to
No,
interrupt you, but do you have a hard copy of that?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
I do, sir. This goes to you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for reminding me, because I get talking and I forget. This is the continuum of services for these youth. Again, truant students who need a different approach. And also, I should mention that we have worked with the court systems as well. Christy has had a meeting with Judge Hoke, and I know there's probably another meeting going to happen soon. So, there's a lot of people involved trying to figure out where best to educate these students. Currently, in that first block, diversion, tutoring, and support, that is currently happening. That's current. And that's something, where do those funds come from?
The county take care of that. Mr. Snyder makes all of those arrangements.
Okay. The second block is our classroom, where Principal Snyder has allowed us in his school to serve as an option pathway classroom, where we screen students, and there's a collaboration with the local school district, with DHHR, with courts. So there's different students in those classrooms. It's not just, it may not just be students who have been court involved. It could be students that the school has identified that this is the best option for these students. If we don't get to these students now that they could be in danger of dropping out. Of course, that's what we want to avoid. We fund the teacher in that classroom. I might be preaching to the choir already, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that we'll continue. And we also, our transition specialist helps out there. I think we've talked about that. And then also you guys have a social worker on staff that helps and assists with that. Also, there are Youth Report Center kids already in Lincoln County High School. I mean, that is occurring. So these aren't the kids that we're talking about. They're not new kids, I guess, is what I'm trying to point out. These kids are in your county. Anitra and Scott, they help with those collaborations and monitorings and things like that. I can't probably explain that as well as you can, but, you know, if there are questions about that, we certainly can have those answered. The YRC Option Pathway Program offsite is something we're trying to develop. We met, before we came here, we met over at where the elections are pulled up, the old church. I'm not calling it the right building, probably where your elections occur. We are looking at renting space, and we have funding for another teacher, for a youth report center teacher to be on site for students who may be not right to be on site, but need a different kind of environment where we can offer that task program there, and also coordinate with your principal on CT and those kind of things. We are actually going back when we're finished with this meeting to meet with Mary Napper to have a further discussion about that space, because we looked at some space and it wasn't quite right for our needs. We looked at some different space upstairs that I think would meet our needs. So we certainly want to continue to work on that. We'd like to say we do have the funding for that teacher in place. We secured that last week, actually, and that's actually through neglect and delinquent funds through a Title I piece that we get. I don't know if Lincoln County gets any Title I neglect and delinquent, but it's Part D. Typically, you know, Part A is your typical Title I allocation. Part D is specifically targeted for these types of students. And one of the initiatives is looking at students in community care and community placement. So the Title I coordinator, Rebecca Darrens, has allowed us to cordon off some of our funds. We had an increase in funds this year. We cordoned off a piece of those funds to specifically fund this teacher if it is something that the board superintendent is interested in doing. So we would like to continue that. We can serve more students and hopefully even increase our numbers, which are good. The numbers, I know that we have a wonderful classroom teacher over there too, making sure that happens from what I hear. The last piece, obviously, residential still may occur with some of these kids. Some of these kids still may get placed. It is a certainty that some of them will end up in custody, or a judge could put them in care. That feels like could happen. So if that happens, you know, we're there already to provide that education and provide that transition back if that indeed does happen. Obviously, we hope that we can lessen that for Lincoln County as far as students going out of county. We hope we can keep them, possibly serve them in these environments as opposed to that. But unfortunately, for some residential care, we're moving them from that environment for a period of time due to family issues, trauma, et cetera. Sometimes that is necessary. So that's kind of our overview. You can see below, there's just a discussion here about the placement committee for the Trinity Universal Classroom and who that includes. As you can see, that's why we call it collaborative, because we have all these people at the table trying to figure out the best place for these students. And then also our classroom placement process, you can kind of see how that plays out for how we determine what students end up in this program. And again, big piece is that truant piece. That's kind of the first piece that we look at. Are kids missing? Can we get them back in? You know, do they meet the criteria for option pathway? Obviously, that's a big piece too. But you know, the tape scores and working with the courts and that kind of thing. So that's kind of a big overview. And I know I've verbally thrown a lot at you, but I kind of just wanted you to understand what we were doing. If you weren't. Didn't have all the information, but also what we'd like to continue to do in Lincoln County, if you allow us. We have developed a great relationship with the county high school. We feel like we're making progress and strides to help these students, and we'd like to do a little bit more if possible. And again, we're stretching those dollars as much as we can to make sure that we can do that and throughout the state. If we could, the Title I program has been gracious enough to allow us to put off those funds so we can provide this teacher just as soon as we can nail down the space issue. It's kind of been an up and down thing, but I think we're headed for a good conversation this afternoon where we get that down is what I think we're headed for. So I'll entertain any questions. I may divert you to a better expert if you ask me directly, if that's okay. But depending on the question, I may be able to answer it. I may have to get some expertise here from Christy or from the Bureau of Juvenile Services. Any questions that anyone has?
Well, so the funding for the teacher is already available. It's just a matter of a schedule time. Right?
Yes, sir. It's in place.
Now, would this teacher be employed by the Board of Education or by some other entity?
We can do that. Whatever is more convenient but because it's federal dollars, I am allowed to sub-grant that to the county. So we could grant that to the county and the county can hire, or we can hire directly from my office to the department. It really, we can do it either way with the dollars that we
Would
have.
that then decide or determine whether who would be the supervisor and who would evaluate the
Yes.
individual?
Yes, we would have to work that out. If it was, if we did grant the money, then that would have to be worked out on Lincoln County's end on who would supervise. If we do it from my office, that is already in place. But obviously, I don't want to, I'm not here to step on toes, so if that's something that's one or the other way, I'm here about the kids getting served.
Well, I don't think that any of us have a preference right
Okay.
now, I'm just asking.
Okay, sure.
Anybody else have any particular questions in members of the board?
I've got one. How
Yes,
do
sir.
these children get to school? On a school bus or how, or riding one of our buses?
If they're going to Lincoln County High School and they're not kicked off the bus for some other reason, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Snyder, they are using that transportation. Now, I do know Bureau of Juvenile Services also provides some transportation, but I don't know if that's something you guys do and how that works. Yeah, so in regard to getting them to an off-site, that is, I know that when we talked to Anita's boss, Jason, that he did say that there could be some, we could work some of that kind of transportation issues out. We've also done additional grants for transportation, for a few $1,000s if there's an increased cost or something like that. We have in our truancy budget, we have about a little window, that 2 million, by little, I mean about $8,000 to $12,000 left for the year, for anything else that might come up, so we can tap into that if we had to. But I'm pretty comfortable being working on it. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. The students that are assigned there now, would they be there all day long, or would they be at the high school part of the day and at this location the other half of the day?
Sure. The conversations that we have had, because if we have an option pathway program there, just as with Ms. Snyder's program that we have at Lincoln County High School, half of the day is preparing for that task, and a portion of that day is working on the career and tech ed piece. Now, I've had conversations with your principal multiple times. We talk rather frequently. And you know what? We're going to evaluate that on a student-by-student basis. Of course, if it's a student that's expulsion or in lieu of expulsion who is additionally involved with the court system, that student would not be able to come on campus. I'm sure those are your rules and regulations, and we would uphold those. So that student could do some additional programming. We have courses where students can pick up their OSHA card, first aid, CPR, get your food handler's card, all of those type of soft skills and entry-level skills that students have to have. So even though it may not be a traditional career and technical education program, as we have at the high school, they could still be working toward those, because ultimately we want them to graduate and want them to be able to get a job, no matter what that employment is. I think that's what everyone's goal is and why we're all here. Mr. Snyder will review those students on a case-by-case basis. There will be some students who certainly could come over and take those career and tech ed courses, just as Ms. Snyder's students do. They spend part of the day with her. They spend part of the day in career and technical education. So it would be a blending of all of those different types of mixtures, but we would make sure that the placement was appropriate for the student and that everyone was safe and that everything was secure at all times. It would just have to be a lot of discussions and a lot of review.
The student could be involved in our CTE programs part of the day and then go to the diversion
Yes.
class the
Yes,
rest of the
sir.
day. Getting back to Mr. Curry's question, then, there's going to be some transportation of those students during the day. Have you thought about that, or will we
Yes, sir.
provide a bus to
The
do that?
conversations that we have had with Jason was that there is a van that his staff has access to. And I believe when we met, Mr. Snyder, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jason shared that some of those things could happen. We also talked about if there was need for transportation, we'd have to work it out in the middle of the day. Same thing with lunches. Lunches will be brought over from one of your schools, like as a satellite kind of piece. But certainly before we dove into this, we'd have to finalize all of those pieces. So that's why we asked Anitra to come today and join us, because Jason's on vacation and everybody deserves one of those. So
Jason probably does, yeah, absolutely.
yes, and so, but when Jason met with us prior, he noted that we could work out all of those types of pieces. Yes, sir. We certainly don't want getting from point A to point B to be the obstacle to being able to serve these students, because they need a really good, high-quality education.
Oh, I don't think it'd be a problem. I'm just trying to
Absolutely.
firefighter, yes.
And thankfully, it's a
Sure,
short
sure.
distance too. That's the other great part about where we're looking at a classroom space and locations in the school. It's not a huge distance. In some counties, the distance is much larger between point A and point B. So we're very fortunate, I think, to be looking at a much smaller window here.
And that is why Jason said to me, Christy, we've got to keep it to Hamlin. When we weren't sure if we could find a site in Hamlin, that was his comment. He said, because the county really helps us out with the students riding those county school buses to come into Lincoln County High School. And because you are geographically spread out, he said, Christy, I need it to be in that central location just like the high school is. So that's why we've been trying so hard to find a site within Hamlin to be able to house that classroom.
And the fact that we only have one high school.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if this would be Mr. Midkiff or Mr. Snyder. Would this program result in some of our staff having additional duties or needing additional staff?
I don't think so. I think the counseling piece,
Yes.
and I've talked to Mr. Green about some support there because
Yes.
some additional work their counselors have taken on. I realize there are students that.
Right. I don't have a mechanism to fund an additional school counselor. What we can, as I indicated, if that counselor was interested in maybe some additional days, we might be able to fund some additional days. But in regard, I don't have that mechanism to fund an additional school counselor with the funds that we have in place. We can't use the Title I funds because it would be considered supplanting because those students are already here and are required to have counseling services provided. So I have to look within my state budget, those state dollars, we just don't have that. We just don't have that mechanism. We could do some kind of a grant to Lincoln County where we could extend some days perhaps on that counselor's contract too. If there's some need for additional hours or those kind of things, we can handle that with him.
Mr. Midkiff, you all discussed this.
We've traded some emails
Yeah.
and had some discussion, but we just don't have that mechanism to fund that at this time.
I was going to share one. If Ms. Snyder is actually an employee of the Department of Ed, so I supervise Ms. Snyder. Now I collaborate, obviously, with Lincoln County High School. I am there rather frequently, and we collaborate. So if this employee were an employee of the Department of Ed, again, it would not necessarily place a undue burden on Mr. Snyder. I would collaborate with him in terms of that evaluation because the teacher would be placed in the master schedule of the high school because of transcripting, because of grades, because of those types of things. I've also talked to Mr. Snyder about if there is a behavioral issue that would involve him, it's the same as you would with any other student in Lincoln County. You would follow those procedures accordingly. And we'd have to work out all of those systems. And there will be a bump or two along the way, like there was in our other classroom. But I'm going to tell you that the success of the program this year in Lincoln County was tremendous. I have found a wonderful home that I love coming to rather frequently. It has just been absolutely fantastic. And the feedback from the career and tech ed teachers at your high school, they weren't sure at first. And then after the program got into place, they have just embraced us and helped our students so much. I cannot explain that even when our students finished some of their classes, some of the CTE teachers really took them under their wing and picked up additional credentials, had them come additional time, because everyone wants these students to be able to have a genuine shot at being able to have employment. So it has been a wonderful situation thus far. I hope Mr. Snyder, he's shaking his head yes, so hopefully it has been great for
Well, I
him.
thought about Mrs. Snyder when you mentioned that, now, are we to understand then that you and Mr. Snyder collaborate about Mrs. Snyder?
Actually, yes, but he has one of his assistant principals actually, because he is really good to follow 5310 and your county policy say he doesn't do her evaluation, so, yes,
I just wanted to, Mrs. Snyder to know that.
yes, absolutely. And he is also a wonderful cook because sometimes he makes things for our students. Does a great job.
Well, I need to know what those days
I
are.
know.
I'm just over in Boone County. I can get over.
Well, it sounds like it would be a very worthwhile program, obviously, for the students, but it serves some of the needs that we have because, as you know, those are our students, regardless of where the placement may be. There's still
Exactly.
students from our county. So, Mr. Meekin has shared with us some of the information that you're talking about today. And we've talked with some people at the courthouse, as we could say here, and how they, you've been there and looked at that facility and all those things. Is there anything else anybody else has that we haven't already mentioned or has been discussed already? Anything else that y'all want to share with us? You haven't got to say much if you wish. Certainly welcome to. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Green. Appreciate
Thank you all
coming
very
down
much.
today.
I really appreciate you having us today.
Anything comes up, just get hold of this big kid.
We'll continue, after we meet today, I'll back give you a call later this, are you gonna be at the superintendent's meeting later this week?
I'll be there for Thursday and Friday.
I'll touch, maybe we can touch base.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Dana, give us our lights, please. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, I saw Mr. Godley there. He's in at us a while ago.
You want me to go? I don't care.
Well, Mr. Gosney is in a pre-bid meeting. Maybe he over.
He was there a second, a few minutes ago. but
Let's check, Ray, and see. It's pre-bid for the sewer treatment plants.
Rachel.
I can go.
He can.
Ray, you wanna go and I'll go check on it? Hey.
The finance
Maybe I need to get
director-
long-winded or something to help you, man. I probably don't want that, do
We'll fit you in when you get through. Ray Ellis, our finance director, treasurer extraordinaire, is going to talk to us about the excess savings.
Mr. Goff.
Mr. Gosney.
You wanna go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Get away from here. Got any questions for me?
Mr. Ellis? Okay. That is not Mr. Ellis, it's Mr. Gosney. He's going to talk to us about a maintenance update. Hi, Greg.
We're having a pre-bid for sewer plants in Duval and Midway. 5 people that showed up, going through it, and we want the location and look at that. Hopefully that'll go smooth now that we've got everything else lined out with all the permits.
Is there any schedule in this for those?
Alright.
A schedule when those might be done?
It's just a pre-bid, and 2 weeks back, we'll do awarding the contract back here, so.
I mean,
As
when
far
will
as
the
getting
actual
it complete, when we do the actual bid, we'll have more of an idea when they turn their bids in, and give us a time frame for that. The whole thing with the sewer plants, like we talked before, is that we're not gonna take the existing ones out. And I even made it clear in there that also that we wanna make sure these are working properly before we even think about taking the old ones out. So there's issues with, Mason County that had some leaks and things like that, we don't wanna go through that.
I mean, so it's conceivable that some of that work can take place during this school year.
I'm hoping, what my thoughts are is that if everything goes well, and weather and all, I'm hoping by Christmas we'll be maybe doing a switch over, so, yeah. That's my hopes with everything. Just to go over some things that we've been doing and throughout the summer. First thing is, You don't go to Paris Island to get a haircut. I figured that out real quick. I said, I just want to trim. First thing I know, there's clippers going up in my ears.
Say you're lucky, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're lucky.
I was like, the wrong place to get a
Cut
haircut.
shorter than that.
Found that out. What we've done, we relocated the preschool playground that was here, and relocated preschool back to Hamlin Elementary. We installed new bathrooms, new sinks, had to cut a lot of concrete out to make that happen, but all that's complete and ready to go. That's some things we've done there. The modulars, it has been delivered. Everything going, moving forward with that. We've connected the electric, we've connected the sewer, we've connected the water. They're building the decks now. I have contacted, we have to tie the fire marshal, we have to tie the fire system in, so that's happening next week. I have contacted the awning to get the awning replaced on it. And the final thing on the modules, we have to have the fire marshal walk through and they have to sign off on it. That's the key to it. So we're gonna be kind of close. I'm hoping for time school starts, but maybe a week after. That's according to how we can get all this to work out. So, but it's came out really well. We've got it. One of the things we've done this summer is we built the soccer road. We put in soccer. What we talked about in several meetings that we've had is that we finally went in and put some soccer road, and it turned out pretty well. Then we put in there's 130 ton of topsoil setting over there. I guess work this out when the season's over or something, get the topsoil on the field. It's all there. Roofing projects are coming to an end. We've par roofing done with pretty much done with Gun Valley. Boggs is moving out. Now over at Hamlin, stuff's a little bit of flashing due. Midway, a little bit of flashing due. It's done. Rangers complete. The good thing is that we did get the approval from the SBA to do West Hamlin, so we're excited about that. We'll work that out throughout the school year to make sure that happens with that one. Couple of little problems we had with the roofing project. We had Duval had some damage, some water damage. They didn't cover back up before a storm came for the weekend, and flooded the upstairs and came downstairs. So a lot of ceiling tile was damaged, a lot of floor tile was damaged, and some other equipment damaged in there. And they damaged an air conditioner, lifting some things up. We're working with the contractor to get all that repaired, replaced before school starts. They have replaced all the ceiling tile. We're just working on the floor tile now. And we ran into an issue at Midway with the roof drain. We're still dealing with that. It's original roof drain. We don't know if it's collapsed or what, but we may have to reroute that, and we'll take care of that as we go along. But that's some things we've done there. Lighting upgrades. We continue to do our upgrades with the lighting. All the flowers at the high school sidewalk lights have all been replaced now. They're all LEDs. We're working now. We've replaced 13. We've got 13 more coming for all the parking lot lights have been upgraded to LED lighting also. So I'm looking for a huge saving on our electric. That's been a big hog out there. The high school has been the outside lighting. So we're working on that. We've got hearts scheduled for sidewalk lights to be done. They'll be in hopefully next week, and then looking at some areas there. We upgraded all the at the high school and at Hearts, all the flagpole lights, LED lights, all the other the older type never could keep them running and keep them on, so we did upgrade all those. Door swipes, we finally got the county-wide with all the door swipes. We have one card you can swipe and get in all your doors. You don't have to worry about fobs and all those things. So Midway we're finishing up here. I hope to have it finished tomorrow. It will be done where everybody will have a card swipe for that. And that also took care of some safe schools issue with Midway and Duval. When you have a power outage, those doors would just be wide open. So now when the power outage comes now, they're going to lock down state where you don't have to deal with that. We dealt with a glycol leak at Hearts, a big 6-inch line that we made some repairs on it. We think we've got it pretty well. So we'll find out in the fall when we start everything up. We tried to run everything and, for the hot water and things like that, but we couldn't simulate it, make sure it's not leaking. It wasn't leaking right now, but, those are things we've done this now. Any questions on that? Anything on that?
What about the light out here in Apple?
The light?
Yeah, the fire department.
That's ordered. We ordered that. I know what worked with Mr. Ellis on that, trying to get the fire department ran over the light, trying to get the insurance worked out that. We decided we're going to buy it. We have to have it, so we're going to do it and we'll do that. I ordered it, it's 4 to 6 weeks out. It was ordered 3 weeks ago, so we'll probably will be 2 weeks into the school year to where we get it. But the good thing about this one, it was having an issue with the clock, so if you had to back over one, that's the best one to back over. That worked out pretty well with that one. Yeah, that's. Oh, one more thing too. The goalposts for the football field are due to be delivered today, 2:30, so they should be delivered today. I've set up everything. You have to take a 3-foot auger and take everything to get the inserts in to put the goalpost up. So we hope to have those done before school starts too. It'd kind of be nice to see your goalpost.
Great on this, do you just order, have a hole, drop it in there, or is it a platform, or what kind of that done?
They got the sleeves that go in there, and it's a certain slots this way and that way that you have to line up at the center of the field and the edge of the field. They have to be a 3-foot diameter hole. You have to put in 62 inches deep. And at the bottom of that hole, you put 6 inches of gravel in the hole for drainage. And when you come up to it, you gotta be 6 inches below grade level to get the dirt up where you have no bolts or things like that sticking out. So it's a big hole. You're looking at probably almost 2 yards of concrete for each one of them. So the whole.
When you do that, is it going to be concrete that you can move manually, or will you have to have a concrete truck out there? Do you know?
I don't want a truck.
Well, I know you don't, I just wondered.
Well, what we're looking at, we have our Kubota now that we use, and probably get the concrete truck as close as we can, and then take it in the bucket out there, and then, I'm wanting to put tarps and things over too.
Well, they can
damage anything.
They can pump on pretty long.
Yeah, but to get a pumper out, it's pretty expensive for just this job. I mean, we can